In an ideal world, would you have rather had the schedule that Michigan has had, where they've played what, 4 home games?
For home
Would
games.
you rather have had JJ already have a start on the road, or this route that they currently have?
Well, it depends if that start on the road was versus a quality opponent. I mean, it wouldn't have mattered to me if they had a road game at one of these opponents. Maybe Maryland. Not to say that playing at Maryland is some kind of intense environment, but at least it would have been a Big Ten test on the road. The first three opponents, I don't think it would have mattered anyway. Playing at UConn, Colorado State, or Hawaii wouldn't have mattered. But maybe playing at Maryland, I would have felt a little bit better. But other than that, this is kind of what it is based on their first four opponents. You saw, quite frankly, Michigan definitely didn't dominate Maryland, compared to their first three opponents. So there's definitely a lot still to learn and to be proven for this year's team. And I do believe one way or the other, we will learn something about this team after Saturday, which is a great thing.
Okay. Mark, what are your thoughts on Michigan playing at Kinnick, and should they be worried and concerned?
Yeah, I think they should be worried and concerned, maybe a little strong. Just have respect for their opponent, and I'm sure they do. I'm sure Jim Harbaugh's beaten that into their heads because I guess there's going to be a temptation for a 19 or 20-year-old to say, "We just played these guys 7 or 8 months ago. We beat their brains out. I don't see any difference in the two teams now. We should be able to." We should be able to take care of business with no problem. I do think it's a difficult, we joke back and forth. Maybe some people overplay the Kinnick Stadium factor. I think I got a pretty healthy medium in there. I was actually going through each season. I was just curious because I thought, anytime there's some kind of cliched situation in college football, like a trap game, like all three of us could define what a trap game is. You play a really good opponent. You play a really good opponent 2 weeks later. In between, you're playing the worst team in the league. Trap game. There's a few different little variations. So we know what it is, but it's never been proven to me whether that actually is a thing. I know what it is, but I don't know if it's really impacted the results. Like it's come home to roost that this is a thing that bites good teams. Like, I would love to see somebody do a statistical breakdown and say, we're defining a trap game like this, and we're going to go through the last 5 years of college football and determine if this actually happens. And it's the same thing with Kinnick Stadium. Love to make a measurement of, okay, how does Iowa play on the road? How do they play at home? Well, obviously, they've got a much better record at home, but everybody does. So how much better is their home field advantage than everybody else?
Yeah, I am one that I just am of the thought process, and just talking with this year's teams, right? Both of them, Iowa and Michigan, that I truly think that Michigan is the better team, and my expectation is that you go in and play as the better team and win the game. And Dre and I have talked off stream quite a bit, and about just Kinnick, and I understand it. There's been a lot of top 5 teams and highly ranked teams that go into Iowa, and Iowa just pulls out a crazy performance and performs really well and wins the game. I think with some of those games that the other team was potentially, because I want to make sure I give Iowa the credit, they won the game, but I think, kind of going back to your point, Mark, of the trap game, I think some of those games were indeed trap games. Like the 2016, the last time Michigan played at Kinnick. And if I'm not mistaken, I know, Dre, we talked about it on the phone. I thought that next week, that the week after the Iowa Michigan game, that Michigan was playing Ohio State. If I'm not mistaken, I could be wrong, but at that point they were undefeated. And then that Iowa game, in maybe it was a week or two, but essentially it was, I could easily see Michigan potentially looking past Iowa and just saying, listen, we're way better than Iowa. We're the number 4 team, I think, at that point in the country. We've got this huge matchup with Ohio State going on, and I could easily see that happening. Now, Iowa won the game, so it doesn't matter. But I could see that. So I guess my overall point is just you're the better team. Just go in there, play well, play better, perform, and I think they'll be just fine.
So real quick before Dre goes, that was the Michigan game in 2016 was 2 weeks before they played Iowa, Indiana, Ohio State. Now, so you're talking to Dre and you're talking to me, and both of our teams have gotten waxed. Well, they didn't get waxed. They just lost in a really close game. Ohio State had no business losing that game. If you look at each team's season-long performance, Ohio State was a much better team. They were the Big Ten champs, almost went to the playoff, and Iowa wasn't. They were 8-5, good, but not as good as Ohio State. Now, Ohio State had Penn State, a very emotional game against Penn State. They were down by 3 touchdowns. They came back and won by 1 point in Columbus the week before. And they had Michigan State, who was a 10-3 team, good team, the next week after Iowa. So that possibly qualifies.
Yeah.